Hello, welcome to This Week in Mormons, the Sisters Edition, with your hosts, Arianne Smith
and Tiffany Hales. We're here for the month of September.
Here we are again.
I know, we are doing show 601. Last week, Jeff did show 600. I had a super busy week. I'm kind of bummed I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet because I know he was with Al. And that's how I first started watching or listening to the show is I listened to him and Al.
Him and Al back together.
But I had a busy week and I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. Have you?
No, I hope nothing big happened.
Me too. All right. Let's talk about what's going on in our lives.
So, best Sunday of the year in my ward last Sunday, primary program.
Oh gosh. We have not had our primary program yet, but I see on the internet they're going around.
It is the season for a primary program.
Okay, but isn't it a little early? It's September. I usually think of the primary program as like late October, early November.
No, they can run anywhere from September through November.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay, well, good to know.
As a former primary president, we used to have ours in September.
Yeah, well, I try and stay out of primary. I'm not allowed to play with young children.
Okay, so this year was extra special for me because I have a sunbeam. First primary program. So that is a huge momentous occasion. And also I am a sunbeam teacher.
Oh, that's right. And let's face it, the highlight of the primary program really is the sunbeams.
It's the sunbeams. You stick them up front and let them be themselves and they steal the show. And that is exactly what happened.
It's like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get.
Yes. I was very grateful because my co-teacher, she doesn't have kids in primary and they only wanted one teacher to sit on the stand. And she volunteered as tribute. She said, I will do this because you probably want to watch your kid. And I was like, yes, I do.
Now, did your son disappoint or did he bring it with full gusto?
Oh, he was amazing. So he was leaning over the edge. He was making faces. He was playing peekaboo with our friends at one point in time. And they would make a face at him and he would mimic the face back to them. And
so basically he's flirting with the whole audience.
Oh yeah. And he was smiling. Anybody that would smile at him, he just has this smile. He's very charismatic.
He is charismatic.
And he would just smile back at them
oh gosh.
So
too bad you can't video in the chapel anymore because this would be good blackmail for when he's a teenager.
I've never been so close to whipping out my cell phone before and taking a video. I was going to text my friend because I know she'd do it. She's gutsy. I was about to text her and be like, record it.
I know exactly which friend you're talking about too.
So, okay. But then the other hilarious thing, we have 4 sunbeams in our class.
Okay.
So we have 2 girls and 2 boys. So my son was hamming it up. The other boy in the class is very, very shy, very quiet, clings to his parents even when they drop him off at class. And he has this blanket that he takes everywhere with him.
Okay. So you're not even sure he's going to get up on the stand.
No, I'm not even sure he's going to get up there because he barely comes to class every week. And he does not say a word.
Okay.
And so his dad takes him up there and he's got his blanket and he puts his blanket over his head and he sat the entire 45-minute primary program with the blanket over his head. I saw him peek out maybe twice, just a quick peek.
That is hilarious.
I was dying laughing. I was
describe this blanket. I want the visual on this.
This is what makes it even better. His blanket that he loves, that he has had since he was a baby, it is a big fleece multicultural Santa blanket. It has Santa of all races across the front of this blanket.
At least we're fully representing in your ward.
I love it so much. I was like, dude, that is what I want to do when I'm sitting on the stand too. I can appreciate it.
And that is the beauty of the sunbeams, is they can fully, without guile, express everything we feel.
I know. It's so true. So it was great.
Okay, so speaking of the primary program, I was scrolling Instagram last night, and this influencer that I follow, I don't know if she would classify herself as an influencer or just a mom in Utah. Anyway, she had a video on Instagram. You know how they're they only stay for 24 hours.
In the stories, yeah.
In the story, she had a story. Okay. And in this story, she is showing the primary program from her ward in Utah. Now, this is Utah County, mind you.
Now, she's primary president.
I don't know if she's primary president or who she is, but she designed the program.
Okay.
The program for the primary program was 8 pages.
Ooh.
It had the names of every kid. It had things they were saying. It had words to songs. I mean, basically, I think it probably was the whole script for the primary program.
She put all 8 pages up on Instagram?
Well, she's flipping through it in her story on Instagram. She's flipping through it, talking about the primary program, and it's beautifully designed, the graphics and everything. But I'm like,
wow,
that's a bit much, 8 pages for a primary program.
That's intense.
But it is.
She must have a big primary to fill up 8 pages.
I'm like, well, it is Utah County, so there you go. I was like, wow, that's a new one I've never seen. I've seen inserts for the primary program, but I've never seen an 8-page primary program.
Wow.
Yeah. So there you go, folks. See if you can top that in the next 3 months with your primary programs. Anything better than an 8-page primary program. Professionally done.
Okay, I will say, though, I still hold bitterness as a former primary president.
Okay.
Because when I was primary president, our kids did the bells. The hand, the little handbells.
I love the handbells.
Our music teacher was excellent. She was like a music education major. And so she had these kids trained so good on those bells, and we wanted them in the program. And the bishop denied.
You were shut down on
I was shut down on the bells, and I tried to push back.
And they let you do bells at Christmas?
Well, you're not
that
in not in Sacrament.
In my ward, we've done bells at Christmas.
I tried to push back. I was like, the Tabernacle Choir does bells.
Not only that, on the organ, there's a stop for bells on the organ.
There is. I didn't know that.
And I know that because the first counselor in our bishopric loves to play at Christmas time. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, and he does it with the stop and the organ with the bells.
I've never heard anyone use that.
Oh, it is amazing. He does a bang up fantastic job.
So I have been bitter for years.
Well, you should be.
And then this year, this ward did bells, which... I mean, they should have anyways, because it's
been revised.
The handbook is like much more open. Although I will say, even though they hadn't revised that instrument section of the handbook back when I was primary president, there was still nothing in there banning bells. It was subjective. It was like,
no drums, no guitars.
There was nothing about bells. Bells
were great.
They would have been appropriate.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to argue with you. Well, that is such a bummer.
Anyway, but they did bells now. I think bells will be universally accepted. I would hope.
So. Well, we've done bells a couple times at Christmas where they've had bell ringers that go around to like different sacraments and perform, and they came to our sacrament and did a music number. Oh yeah, they were really good. They had the gloves and everything. They were like they were top-notch bell ringers.
I am still waiting to hear some brass instruments though.
That's true. Even though brass is allowed.
It's allowed, but has anybody seen it yet?
I haven't seen it yet. Not yet. That's a good question.
We need to hear.
Okay.
We need a survey.
Well, I'm not dressed in black today, although apparently I should be because I'm kind of in mourning. It was the funeral today for Queen Elizabeth II, the Queen.
We love the Brits.
I love the Brits, and I claim to be a bit British because I did one of those 23andMe DNA tests. And I'm trying to remember what it came back. It came back like 46, 47% British. That was my primary DNA in the DNA kit. So I claim to be British, love the Queen, watched her funeral today while I was at work, or at least I had it on in the background. And it was very touching, very poignant. Probably one of my favorite parts of the funeral is at the end of the service that they had at St. James Chapel at Windsor. And I'm trying to remember what the name of that service was. It was like the commitment service. I can't remember committal. It was the committal service. Okay. So at the very end, they are singing God Save the King, and they focus on Charles's face. And you can see two things. You can see, first of all, the grief in his face for losing his mother. And you can also sense the weight that is upon him, where he's like, I waited 73 years for this, and now it's here. So
his time has come. It was so weird to hear them say king instead of queen, though.
I know.
Like that kind of hit me today as I was watching bits and pieces. Yeah. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I was like, oh, this is weird. I'm just used to a queen, not a king.
I know. Well, the other thing too is, I love that song, and I love it whether you are singing the American version of it, which is My Country 'Tis of Thee, which my third grade teacher made us sing every single day in third grade after we said the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, wow.
We sang My Country 'Tis of Thee. But I also love it as the British national anthem.
I do too.
But it got me thinking, our hymn book is now even more outdated because the last hymn in our hymnal, at least the English American version of the hymnal, which I presume goes to the Brits, is the British national anthem, God Save the Queen.
That's in our hymn book?
It's in our hymn book.
How did I not know that?
Here, look, I'll show you. I know every time we sing My Country 'Tis of Thee, I'm like, oh, but what if I want to sing the English version? Anyway, so our hymn book, which we know is being rewritten, we know they are taking reference.
Right.
They're taking
They're going to take out any national anthems.
Exactly. They're going to take out any national anthems.
We only have America and England, right? Are there any other sneaky national anthems in there that I don't know about?
Anthems.
I did not know this.
Let's pull up the hymn book.
Is it like the last song in the book?
It is the last song in the book. Maybe because I'm pulling it up on Tools. Oh. What if it's been updated on
Check
Tools?
This out. Check this out. Live updates, people. This is riveting information here.
Yes. Look, it's been updated.
They changed
God
it.
Save the King. So they updated it in the last 10 days since her death.
On it.
They are on it. Although I think when I show up on Sunday, probably the green hymn books in my church are still going to be God Save the Queen.
Probably.
I will be quite surprised if they've gone in and crossed out Queen and written King. But yes, it is hymn number 341.
I had no idea. I never even had.
Yes.
I guess I've never gone that far.
So there you go. So yeah, the church is on it, updating the digital version of the hymn book to be consistent with we have a king, no longer a queen.
Good to know.
All right. Well, should we do some news stories?
Yes. We've got quite a smorgasbord of random stories.
We do. So I want to revisit a story that was big news about 3 weeks ago, if I recall correctly. 3 to 4 weeks ago, it was really big news. And there's been some developments on that front since it's been talked about on TWIM. And then there was a story that ties into it this weekend. So you may recall several weeks ago, I believe it was Duke that was playing BYU in volleyball. And there was a Duke player who alleged that she heard a fan repeatedly use the N-word while she was serving. And she let this go on. And I think at some point, she told someone, a security guard or police officer or someone came and sat by the Duke players. They said. They said, exactly.
And they said in the article that they had identified who it was after the fact and they were banned from games.
Did. They identified who they believed the individual was. And she identified that individual. I guess that was an individual who happened to come up to her like after the game, maybe. Didn't say anything negative to her, but she said, that's the guy right there. He was not a BYU student. He was a UVU student. And so BYU took swift action based on this allegation. They banned the individual from coming to games. The athletic director went to her hotel and met with her and said, my deepest apologies. This should never happen, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, national media outlets picked this up and you heard all over the media, BYU is racist, BYU is racist. There were other teams that were scheduled to play both volleyball and BYU in basketball who said, we're not coming to your racist university to be called nasty names. So the Duke player and team goes back to Duke. And so BYU conducts an investigation, as well they should. Mm-hmm. So during that investigation, they go back and they have lots of camera footage from this game. They have the security footage. They have footage that BYU Sports was doing. They have camera footage from all sorts of angles. And they also interviewed individuals who were in this section where this allegedly occurred. At the conclusion of their investigation, after interviewing the player who made the allegation, all of her teammates, all of her coaches, and anybody else that was remotely associated with it, they could not find any evidence to support this allegation. There was nothing on video that they heard, or that they could see anybody mouthing and saying something like that. None of her teammates heard it. None of her coaches heard it. She was literally the only individual that heard it. Now, they did not come out and say she was a liar. They just said, we can't substantiate this claim, which I think is a very, very fair response. And it's an interesting perspective because I was reading this opinion piece, and they were talking about that the BYU-Duke volleyball story became a national, I think it's Rorschach test. It's one of those ink blot tests where you look at the ink blot and you see
different things.
You see different things
based on your perspective.
Based on your perspective. And the point of this opinion piece was, again, nobody is saying that the Duke University or the Duke student athlete made this up.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, she could have very well in her mind thought that that's what she heard.
Right.
Because a lot of times, I mean, in every situation, we come to things with certain prejudice and biases, and those affect how we filter things. And I see that all the time in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can get two people who witness the same thing, and I just go, were you both in the same room? You're telling me completely different stories. And I think it's really true that a lot of times you find what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So if you have a preconceived notion, I think this is XYZ, you're probably going to find XYZ.
Right. Or if that has happened to her before,
exactly.
She's probably super hyper aware.
Hypersensitive, hyper aware.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so this opinion piece just really talks about, race is such a divisive issue in our country, and both sides are using this to prove points back and forth, much in the way of the writer of this opinion piece also talks about Jussie Smollett and the actor who was found to have lied about being a victim of a hate crime, and that's kind of I'm not sure that's. They're not in the same.
They're not the same, and the author isn't saying that she lied.
Yes,
nobody thinks she lied.
And then the author talks about. She says this quote: "First, national media outlets see a story, glance at the details, and report it as fact, like Brianna Keller did on CNN. Checking the facts, couching it with at least some amount of journalistic caution is out the window. And for a busy audience that catches the initial reporting of their story, it's a glance, and it's obvious that BYU is full of racists, because there really has been minimal retraction from the national media outlets.
This just came out last week.
Exactly.
I think, that BYU released its report.
Exactly.
And it hasn't been covered much yet, although I think it's starting to trickle down. But
a little bit.
But when it is covered, it's not a headline. It's just like, oh, BYU found it's not,
BYU in their investigation, kind of tainting like BYU wouldn't be fair in their investigation. And from everything I've read, I think BYU was very fair in their investigation, because if somebody is out there using that kind of language on campus at an event sponsored by the school, BYU wants to shut that down. They're not there to sweep that under the rug. And a really another interesting thing that this opinion writer wrote is she said, it's worth asking whether truth may be somewhere in the middle. You can have enormous respect for Rachel Richardson as a player and as a person, and believe she is telling the truth about what she believes she heard, yet wonder if the truth is still out there unaccounted for.
Right.
And so it's really interesting. And then it becomes even more interesting in the wake of what happened this last weekend. So this last weekend, BYU football, who was ranked to number 12, went over to Oregon to play the Ducks.
It did not go well on many levels.
First of all, BYU lost.
We watched
big time.
We watched that game. It was rough.
It was rough. But the student section at the University of Oregon was ranting a rather bigoted chat. They were saying F word Mormons repeatedly, over and over and over again.
And I do not think this is the first time this has happened. Maybe at Oregon, but I mean,
it happened at USC.
I remember
last year.
Another story. Yes,
it was USC.
We've already done this story. I remember. I just don't remember what school.
It was USC. Okay. And so, and this was clearly, I mean, there is no question that this happened.
Right.
There are multiple videos of it.
Right.
In fact, there was one firsthand account. There was a BYU fan, and she and a girlfriend pick an away game every year to a new area they haven't been to, and they travel there. I believe she's from the East Coast. They travel there and go to the game. And so she happened to kind of be sitting in or near this student section. and she can't believe this chant that she's hearing. And so she gets out her cell phone and she is like videoing this chant that she's hearing. And they're like, yeah, go ahead and video it. Blah, 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 blah. Send it to my mother. Blah, blah. I mean, they're kind of giving her a bad time for videoing it, but she videos it. So there's absolutely no doubt in this case, what was said. And so it's really been interesting to watch the media response. First of all, Governor Cox. I'm a huge fangirl of Governor Cox. Fangirl, Governor Cox. And he loves the Twitter. And he knows how to use Twitter appropriately. That's all I'm going to say on that matter. And
unlike other politicians,
Spencer Cox understands the positive use of Twitter. So he gets on and writes on Twitter, religious bigotry is alive and celebrated in Oregon. And some of the media outlets pick up on it, not that many. The University of Oregon is falling all over themselves to say, we are so sorry. Right. This was inappropriate.
And, I think that us as BYU associated with BYU, I would think after what we just went through a few weeks ago, I would hope that we are very forgiving and understanding of the predicament they're in. Like, they have how many thousands of students there with, undeveloped brains,
clearly
making choices that 20-year-old undeveloped brains make. And, they can't control them all. And of course they feel awful. And so I feel like, well, at least we're hopefully a little bit more understanding now than we might have been 3 weeks ago.
And that reminds me, because the firsthand account that I read of this girl who with her friend went to the game, who's a BYU alum, when she was videoing, someone around her said, oh, they're freshmen, don't hold this against them. Because her point was, well, at 18, you should probably understand that that's not maybe the most appropriate thing to say, even if your brain is kind of undeveloped.
Right.
But, the University of Oregon, to their credit, jumped on this as fast as BYU did.
Right. And they said the same thing. They said the same investigation.
Full investigation. But then what was really interesting is Governor Kate Brown from Oregon, she was like, ooh, I just got dissed by Governor Spencer Cox. I better get on my Twitter. So she gets on her Twitter and she says, in Oregon, we strive to be a welcoming, inclusive state to all, regardless of race, religion, gender, or background. Our state and nation have an ugly history of discrimination and bigotry. The chant at yesterday's Oregon BYU game was unacceptable. We must do better. So anyway, it's just, the whole thing is, just like you said, it is so interesting coming on the heels, literally, of a similar incident at BYU.
It is very interesting. And one of the opinion pieces, I think, from the Deseret News was just talking about how prevalent this is becoming in society. We see the F Biden flags. Living in Idaho, I see those all the time on people's pickup trucks.
Oh, yeah.
The F Biden.
Yes.
Full word, spelled out, waving in the wind. And as a mother, it makes me so angry.
Yeah.
So angry. I don't care whose name is under it. But the fact that I'm driving around with my small children and the F word is driving right by them in giant letters.
Yes.
I'm just like, how does anybody think this is okay?
Exactly.
And the article was just talking about, like, as a society, we've really been throwing that around a lot lately.
Exactly.
In various and assorted ways.
Exactly. In fact, this opinion piece says the country is in a foul mood and it's showing up in sports arenas. And I'm like, the writer's not wrong about that, because he was also talking about other professional sporting events where fans will behave in that manner. And
when we lived in Portland, the Timbers is the soccer team in Portland and they're hugely popular and their games are so fun to go to. And my husband had been to a couple games and I think he took our oldest daughter to one of the games when we lived there. But they were, and this was like, 8 to 10 years ago, they had a reputation for just being super rowdy, the fans. Ooh. And they would shout F-bomb. They had a certain chant, and now I can't remember what the exact chant was, but they would do it at every game. And it involved an F word. And my husband would come home and he'd be like, "Oh, they're a rowdy group. Those Timbers fans are a rowdy group." So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's been happening at timber stadiums for a
Yeah.
while, but now it's happening everywhere, I guess.
Well,
So,
and it's just, I mean, it's, I know we've talked about this a lot on the podcast before. I, I hate to see the decline in civility.
mhm.
You know, when I think of gospel principles and I think, you know, how what we're expected as, you know, members of of the church, you know, you can engage in meaningful discussion without having to downgrade to,
Right.
you know,
Name
swear words and
calling
name
and-
calling and all of that. And so anyway, I doubt that this will be the last of our coverage of this types of events.
Yeah,
So
super, super interesting, especially with the timing.
exactly.
So,
All right, so let's move on
okay.
to our next story.
This is another just like fascinating topic of discussion that you and I could probably talk about at length. So, on the TWIM Facebook page today, Jeff just posted it was from Reddit.
It's a screenshot from Reddit.
Screenshot from Reddit of a woman who was just kind of questioning, like, what's going on with garments in the church? Like, people who've been to the temple have made those covenants, like.
Well, and the title of the post is telling. It says, modesty in garments now largely ignored. Am I taking crazy pills?
So she's just kind of throwing it out there on Reddit. Like, what is the deal? Are you seeing this where you live too?
Yeah. Or is it just me in my little enclave?
Basically just, you know, she points out that she sees women that she knows have been married in the temple, have been to the temple.
Yeah.
Just, you know, not wearing their garments and clearly not wearing their garments like on the regular, not just when they're exercising, but when they're out on date night. And
exactly. They will wear them for church and temple is what she's seeing.
And then she also goes off a little bit about the young women
and modesty.
The way we're teaching modesty. Anyway, we have lots of thoughts and feelings on all of these subjects.
We have so many thoughts.
This is something that has been on Tiffany's mind for a long time.
Oh,
because she's always asking me and anyone who will listen, like, what's with the influencers and their garments?
I know. So see, this is kind of where I first noticed it is, you know, I follow a lot of the influencers that are LDS, and I started noticing probably within the last year or so, I'm like, they never wear their garments, you know, and I could tell they were still active because, you know, if they've left the church, then I'm going to totally understand why they're not wearing their garments. But they were never wearing their garments. And I was just like, I wanted to understand why.
Like, I don't feel like you were being judgy. No. I think she's really, when she's talked to me about it, been like, is this a generational thing?
Yeah. Is this, you know, I just wanted to understand why. And I haven't been able to adequately find an answer to that answers my question as to why. And so finally someone on Reddit asked the question.
Somebody else asked the question
that I've been kind of like, oh, I don't know if I want to go there because I just, again, I you know, I don't want to come off as being self-righteous or judgmental or anything like that. It's just, you know, when and again, this is me. This is Tiffany 101, or, you know, this is just purely Tiffany's opinion on what I think. So, you know, I went to the temple later. I was almost 30 before I went through. So I had many years of being an adult and not wearing garments. And I'm not going to say it was my favorite thing to do when I went through the temple that I'm like, woohoo, I get to wear garments now. You know, there was definitely an adjustment period for me. And I understand a whole lot of the issues associated with garments and the fit and being hot and all of that. And for me, I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to live this covenant the way that I feel good about and the way that I can, you know, appear in front of the Lord and say, yes, I live this covenant. It means, you know, all those times that I really would not really want to wear my garments, I'm going to be wearing my garments. And so, you know, that's how I interpret the covenant. And I understand that people can have, you know, people can have their own interpretation of the covenant. People can go pray about it and get their own revelation. But I'm just searching for some answers, people. So not some answers, some understanding is what I'm searching for. I just want understanding.
So this is just super interesting to me, and the comments were fascinating.
Oh,
So
the comments on the Facebook page.
Jeff
Holy
put
cow.
this on the up on the Twin Facebook page today, and there were a lot of comments. Like some articles get 2 or 3 comments, and it's a spicy one when it gets like 50 plus comments,
50 plus,
or in the hundreds. Anyway, so just reading through the comments was just so interesting, and I can just see so many. I can see all angles of this. Some people are saying, why do you care? Why are you judging? And I totally understand that angle. And also I totally get that, like, this is a very visible thing. It is so easy for us to see this one.
Exactly.
Whereas if somebody is,
popping a few beers on the weekend,
right,
we might not know.
Someone's drinking coffee at their house, you don't know. If someone's paying tithing in their own unique, special way, you don't know. Like, this is just such a visible thing. So it comes off as judging because you see it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And sometimes
usually I'm not going to see you if you're drunk.
Right.
And you're probably going to do that at home and not in public.
And good or bad, I mean, people do judge. I mean, I hope would not be like, I hope this is coming off as loving and not like, why are you not wearing your garments?
Yeah.
Because I don't think so. But there are going to be people that are very judgmental of that. And
well, and I think you get one generation removed from us. Like I see a lot of those, and again, I'm totally stereotyping here. I see a lot of those older women in the temple who are just super persnickety about stuff. And I'm like, oh, I bet this is driving them to want to drink. Oh,
yeah. The difference between that generation and us. I mean, like, I go to the gym every single day and I wear my workout clothes and not my garments. Yeah. And I will not change into my garments until I shower. And sometimes that's not till 4:00 in the afternoon. And sometimes I'm running around town and running errands, or I'm taking my kids to the park, because I just have other things to do. And I know some people would not be comfortable with that. And that's okay. Yeah. I'm totally okay if someone is not comfortable with that and they would rather take, their clothes to the gym and shower at the gym and be ready to go when they go out. I get that. But I, at the point, like, personally, where I am comfortable with that and I feel like I'm still living my covenants, and I might spend 6 or 7 hours without them on because I'm sweaty and gross and I'm still in my gym clothes. But
no, and I get that. I guess where I'm seeking understanding is, just from the individuals that I've seen, where it's not just like a few hours because they're in their gym clothes. It is every single day, no matter what outfit you pick. That's the one where I'm like, I'm just trying to understand, people. Can you just help me understand?
Well, and
that I can then have an understanding.
There were also a lot of interesting comments in the comment section and in this lady's original Reddit post about how we're teaching modesty to our girls. Her rationale was, we should be teaching this to our girls. Why are young women allowed to wear shorts? Why are young women allowed?
She was talking about, these girls show up at activities, their butts hanging out of their shorts, etc.
She was pretty hardcore on that. And I, as a mom of 3 daughters, have really, really tried to shift the way I teach them modesty versus what I was taught.
Exactly.
I was very much taught hemlines, inches, fingertips, sleeves.
Exactly.
I was very much taught modesty in that spirit. And so with my girls, I very purposefully tried to teach them what is appropriate to wear when. Yeah. And so they can I'll let them wear their short shorts and their tank tops. And that's just a battle I'm not going to fight. Yeah. I think it's fine if it's in the appropriate setting. And I also, with my girls, I am letting them wear pants to church.
Oh, that's right. You told me that.
If they're dressy, they have jumpsuits. Yeah. A couple of my girls do. Not all of them want to. But I have 2 girls that really, really love a nice dressy jumpsuit. And I let them wear them to church. And I'm teaching them that, I use it as a teaching tool. Like, sure, you can wear this to church. This is dressy. It's church appropriate. Yeah. But you see this other jumpsuit you have right here that's like, shorts and made out of like cotton and knit.
What you'd wear to the beach.
Right. This is not an appropriate church jumpsuit. So I'm trying to make it more about appropriate for the setting and less about what is it? What is it? Shorts? Is it a dress? Is it pants? Is it this long,
Yeah.
this short, and more just about the appropriateness for the setting.
Exactly.
So,
well, and I totally agree with that. I didn't like a lot of her Reddit posts when she got to the modesty stuff with the young women, because I look at that differently. I look at it the way you do, which is, let's talk about the activity that we're engaging in and what is appropriate clothing for that activity.
right.
Again, putting all, the boys will have thoughts and all of that stuff on the shelf. That's the boys' problem. Anyway, but what is the appropriate attire for that activity? The other thing too is, I think, when you go to the temple, you are voluntarily taking that to a higher level. So, any LDS woman who, girls who haven't been to the temple, I would not expect to hold them to that
Right.
temple standard, because they haven't made that covenant. They get to go when they want to and voluntarily choose to enter into that covenant.
Right.
And so I think that that's a lot different. And I didn't like how she lumped the two of them together, because I think they're very separate issues.
Well, and I think it's so personal. I think that's a family decision, because
Exactly.
I do know moms that teach modesty, like, well, let's prepare you for the temple by, our family standard is, if you can't
That's
wear
very
it,
true.
if you can't wear it to the temple, you can't wear it. And that's totally fine too. I think.
See, and that was our mom, and you never got to experience that because you were too young when she died.
That was your life as a teenager.
That was my life as a teenager. It really was. I could not wear shorts. And the reason I could not wear shorts is because I was told, you will never be able to wear shorts once you have garments, so you're not wearing shorts now.
Didn't they have knee-length shorts in the 80s?
It didn't matter. They were shorts. And in fact, I had shorts, and I would sneak them out in my backpack, and I'd put them on, and she caught me a couple times, and
that's brutal.
It was so brutal, and again, that may very well contribute to why I was like not wanting to jump on the bandwagon of wearing garments.
you already had a negative association.
I already had a negative association because of how modesty was taught to me.
I'll never wear shorts again.
Exactly.
After I go to the temple, my shorts are gone.
I mean, I'm sure our mother, she's probably rolling over in her grave, at 3/4 of the stuff I wear these days, because I wear a lot of skirts that go above my knee, but they cover my garments. But in my mother's world, that probably never would have been appropriate. Okay. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
It is super interesting. And yeah, I mean, I think there's just a lot of layers to it. And I think every family's going to teach it different. And that is their, if a family wants to teach it that their kids do only wear what they can wear to the temple, and that works for their family, great. If it doesn't, also okay. Yeah. We gotta, I don't know. We just gotta give each other some slack and some grace. And I do think it should be a family, and
exactly
not coming from a young women's leader. I mean, a young women's leader can teach modesty and, let's dress appropriately, but no more young women's talking about length of shorts or sleeves or exactly. I think those days should be gone.
Exactly.
So,
all right. Well, we've delved into some really heavy topics.
Yeah.
Let's get a little lighter in our news here after, go digging deep on racism and modesty and garments. Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm going to move on to a fun one. I love myself some reality television. We talk about that all the time on here. You have probably never seen this show, College Bowl. Have you ever seen this TV show, College Bowl?
No, I'd never even heard of it.
I caught it last year. It's on Friday nights. It's on NBC, but it's on at obscure times. And I don't even know if it was on Friday night last year. It's on Friday nights this year. I caught 2 or 3 episodes of it, and I really liked it. So this year, BYU was invited to be on it. It's hosted by Peyton Manning. And so they selected 3 students from BYU to be on it.
Okay.
And they filmed it in June. And because they film and then, it doesn't air until later on, and they all have non-disclosures that they can't talk about it or anything like that. And so they selected these 3 individuals, and it is 2 boys and a girl, and they each had their specialty. Like one specialized in literature and another specialized in chemistry and
They're
science
all
type stuff.
Quiz bowl
They're
junkies.
quiz bowl junkies, and once they got selected to prepare for the competition, they would get together on Zoom and practice. Well, they made their debut not last Friday, but the Friday before, and they were against, I believe, the University of Washington. Now, they technically lost to the University of Washington, but what happened is there was another round ahead of them between two schools, Florida State and Georgia, I believe. University of Georgia and Florida State. Well, University of Georgia won, and Florida State lost, but BYU had more points than Florida State, so BYU got to advance to the quarterfinals. So they are now headed to the quarterfinals.
Oh.
They're still doing qualifying rounds to see who all is going to go to the quarterfinals, but they are headed to the quarterfinals, and if they were to pull this off and win the whole thing, $1 million in scholarship money to these students.
Right to them.
Okay. Like if they had lost in the first round, so they would have walked away with $5,000 in scholarship money. So they get more money every round they progress.
Okay. So when is this next round? If people would like to tune in.
You know what? I looked, and they still have the qualifying rounds, so they haven't set when the quarterfinal rounds will be. But what was really funny is when they introduced the BYU students, they had Cosmo there. They didn't know that Cosmo was going to be there, and he came out doing flips. And then famous football player Steve Young appeared.
Oh, he did?
He did. He appeared on the big screen, and he sent them a message and said, we've got lots of national championships, but we don't have a college bowl trophy, so bring it home. And then he disses Peyton. So he says, I'm just going to give you this tip. The guy running this show, he seems like a howdy-doody, yee-haw, aw shucks guy. I've played against him. The guy's an assassin. Go Cougs! So I thought that was kind of cute.
That's cute.
So it's on NBC on Friday nights. So just keep watching the schedule if you only want to watch BYU, or you can watch the other colleges because it's fascinating. I really enjoyed watching it.
Nice. Okay, this next article, this was a Deseret News article all about Patti Edwards, the wife of the late Lavelle Edwards. This article, I'm not going to lie, I teared up. It was so sweet.
It was sweet.
So Lavelle Edwards passed away, I think 6 years ago.
Yeah, 2016.
So she's a widow, and Lavelle Edwards, for those who aren't familiar, was the football coach at BYU.
You're living under a rock if you don't know who Lavelle
so
Edwards
many years,
was.
Years and years and years. I should know the number. I don't know, a few
decades.
He was
like 20 years he was the football coach.
Yeah, the stadium is named after him. He's the one that he just turned them around through the 90s and really shaped them up into a good team.
He coached for 30 years, and 29 of those 30 years he had winning seasons.
That is crazy.
And prior to him coming, they had only had 13 winning seasons.
Right. So everybody loves Lavelle. Well, now I'm convinced everybody loves Patti. I really didn't know much about her until I read this article. Oh my gosh. I just fell in love with her just from reading this article. She's so sweet.
Well, first of all, she's 90 years old.
Yes. She's 90 years old.
She broke her back.
Oh,
so Lavelle,
that part was so sad.
Here's how Lavelle kind of met his maker, so to speak. He had tripped and fallen, and he broke his hip, and Patti was trying to get him up, and she broke her back, and they lied on the floor together that night until she was able to get to her phone the next morning, and his injury was not recoverable.
Right.
And so
he died 4 days later.
4 days later. Her broken back, they couldn't operate on due to her age. So she still has a lot of back pain. But it talked about just recently she was in New York City and she walked 20 miles in 2 days.
And she still lives on her own.
Yeah.
She still drives her car. It sounds like she's sharp as a tack.
Let's call her Queen Elizabeth.
I know. So anyways, she still lives in Provo up in the foothills.
Yes.
Where they've lived for
years,
decades. And this was interesting. It said she still has a box seat at the stadium, and she has 12 seats in the box, and she just invites different family and friends.
Exactly.
To come sit with her. They have a very big family, lots of kids, lots of grandkids. We got to figure
out how to go suck up to BYU to Patti to get BYU tickets.
I know, it's good to be her friend.
Apparently so.
Anyway, she just talked about her marriage to him and all the time they had together and what it's like to be a football coach's wife. And she, in their time together, had started like an association for football coaches' wives across the country. And she just like developed these great friendships with them.
Well, and one of the reasons she did that is when they got married, he still had his senior year to play football at Utah State. And she sat in the stands alone. There were only like 2 other wives of married football players there. And she said, I remembered that alone feeling. And so I wanted to befriend these women who were the wives of football players and the women who were the coaches, or the wives of the coaches of football players, because I know what that's like.
Right. Oh, and it was so cute. She said also in the article that when they got married, he was at Utah State.
Yeah.
They got set up on a blind date. And it wasn't until their honeymoon, they were in the car on their way to their honeymoon, that she confessed to him that she had never seen him play football before.
And she
because
she didn't like football.
And she said she started crying because she felt so bad.
Well,
and then she went to his games after they got married.
And she thought football would be a passing fancy, and he'd go to work on her father's oil wells in Wyoming.
She was wrong.
Didn't quite work out that way.
She was destined for a life of football. Anyway, and it talked about how like through the years, she would like clip out the articles in the newspaper about all of his players and present them to them at the end of the season. And she was always just like sharing her time with him, with the media and the football players and everything. It even said that when he was in the hospital and he was dying, one of his former players,
Jim McMahon, called him up.
And
Jim's like, Patti, can you tell him I love him? Patty's like, here, I'll give him the phone.
And she hands the phone.
To him. Jim's like, I love you, coach.
She just sounds so nice. Yeah. Anyway, it was just a really good write-up.
I want to move in her ward and be her ministering sister. Would she be fun to minister to?
I think she would.
I think she'd be way fun to minister to.
She is the most popular lady in that ward.
I'm sure she is.
So anyway, it was a really cute write-up. Highly recommend.
Okay. Well, it's not a sisters podcast unless we talk about food.
Oh, yeah.
We might have an obsession with reality TV and food. We freely admit this.
Yes.
So,
and fountain drinks.
There was a story in the Atlantic that has a tie to members of to the church. So the story in the Atlantic, it's titled "Foreign Candy Puts American Candy to Shame." And I don't know if you've noticed over the last few years, there has been a real rise in the accessibility of foreign candy, whether it is a candy store that specializes it, or you go into Pier 1 Imports, or any of those kind of fancy stores like that you can find this foreign candy, especially as you get into larger cities. And so, for years in America, it's Hershey and Mars who are dominating the market here in America. The other thing that I've noticed over the last few years is there's a definite thing among influencers where they take candy and they try candy. And in fact, the influencer that we used as our favorite thing, Betsy's Best Bets.
Oh, yes.
She is always doing candy tries.
Those are my favorite videos.
I know. They're usually, some of them are foreign candy tries, but most of them are like if a friend goes overseas, her friends know when they bring her back candy, and she tests it out on Instagram. But mostly she's doing like, all the American candy companies are doing like really bizarre, weird like
flavors,
special,
like the blueberry Kit Kat.
The blueberry Kit Kat, exactly.
I did try that.
And what was it? Was it a candy corn licorice that she tried this week? Anyway, so there's an interesting way that, kind of this growth of foreign candy took place. So you are probably familiar with the candy known as the high chews.
Love high chews.
I brought a little visual tonight.
Yes.
Love high chews as well. So high chews are a Japanese made candy. And so in 2010, high chews were like, we really want to break into the American market. How can we break into the American market? So they started looking at their sales demographics. And in all of those cities along the West Coast, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, where there was a large Asian population, they had really good sales. But then they looked and they're like, Salt Lake City? Why are we selling so many high chews in Salt Lake City? There's just white people there. They could not figure out why they were doing a booming business in Salt Lake City. Well, they did some investigation and come to find out what was happening is, we like to send missionaries to Japan. And what happens when we send missionaries to Japan is they eat the candy in Japan. And then they come back to America and they're like, gee, that high chew is really good. How can I get that? So they were raiding anywhere they could find in Salt Lake City to get these high chews. And so they realized at that point in time, we can convince Americans to like our candy if we just let them taste it, which is really true, because I remember the first time I tasted a high chew, I was like, where has this been all my life? It's delicious.
Do you know who introduced me to high chews?
Did I introduce you?
No, my friend in Portland, whose husband went on a mission to Japan.
Oh,
that is, I never would have.
Well, and that's exactly,
I never would have tried them. They had them at Costco,
Yeah.
and they were so excited.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, we had this in Japan. You got to try these.
Well, and they were saying that's exactly what the missionaries were doing, is not only were they consuming them themselves, they were doling them out to all their friends and family. You got to try this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so since then, high chews have been able to take off. They realized, okay, we've got to get some more visibility. And they realized baseball players like to chew on things, and it's usually gum. Let's give them high chews. So they started in major metropolitan areas giving the high chews to baseball players to chew on. And so then the cameras are focusing on the high chews and what the baseball players are chewing on. Then the fans are going, well, I don't want that. Anyway, and so it's a whole interesting article. It wasn't just high chews, it's other candy companies and how they have been able to kind of infiltrate a very insulated candy market here in America with all sorts of popular foreign candy. And then I will give a quick shout out to
the Cookie Wars.
The Cookie Wars.
We have to revisit the Cookie Wars.
We have to revisit the Cookie Wars. You may recall there is a cookie franchise in Utah called Dirty Dough. And they got sued by, was it Crumble, I believe,
Crumble,
that sued them. And so they released a new video essentially mocking Crumble's lawsuit. And I have to tell you, they have some really good PR people.
Good. I watched the video. It was
funny.
Hilarious. You all should go watch it.
So they are represented by EKR, which is a Utah-based holistic marketing service. It's a small company, and the advertising agency said, our goal has been to control the narrative and own the term cookie wars, and they saw an opportunity with that lawsuit. And so they knew that they could just kind of do something a little crazy. So what's resulted is, by suing Dirty Dough, they've given Dirty Dough all sorts of free publicity, and the brilliant marketing team has just run with it. So like I said, there's a new video. It's funny to watch.
It's funny. I just think it's so brilliant how they spun it.
Okay.
Spun it. Okay. Next article. This is a Jana Reese flunking sainthood.
Because again, we cannot have a podcast without Jana Reese.
I love her. This is on her flunking sainthood account. She interviewed the authors of a podcast called At Last She Said It. This is a podcast that I just stumbled upon like a couple weeks ago.
I know, and you told me about it,
and
I haven't
you, and I was like, you
yet.
have to listen to this
yes,
podcast.
I haven't done it yet.
I love this podcast. It is all about helping Mormon women find their voices. It is run by two active LDS women.
Okay.
Susan Hinckley and Cynthia Winward. I believe they live in Utah. They're active LDS, but they are very, very pro women, feminism. So this podcast may not be for everyone. I will disclaimer, I love it, but it might be extreme for some people.
Okay.
But they're active LDS. They're not trying to take down the church. They're trying to live their lives, actively stay in the church, but also to just kind of empower women to maybe speak up with things that they're not comfortable with, or if something needs to change, or if they think something is funny. They're just very encouraging of just women being able to speak up and not being stifled. And, they just said that it's staggering. The one quote said, by Susan Hinckley, she said, it's been staggering and sad how many women felt no power in their own spiritual lives. And they didn't realize that until they started this podcast, and they're getting so many people
feedback.
write into them and talk to them. So anyway, they have lots of interesting topics.
Because I think aren't they up to like 100 episodes?
Yep, they're up to 100
so,
episodes.
If you think this is something you're interested in, you could go scroll through their episode list and
you can
pick something that's intriguing
and
to you.
choose what interests you. I really love them. I have to listen to them in small doses because when I first found them, I was like, I love them so much. And I listened to like five episodes over a course of like a few days. And I was getting like really like angry, angsty. So I'm like, okay, I think one a week is good.
Okay. Well,
I love them. They just have really thoughtful discussions around women's issues in the church. Okay. Everything from polygamy to temple ceilings to, just teaching young women, just every slew of women's issues that you can think of in the church. They just are having really thoughtful discussions about that we, for many, many years, have been uncomfortable talking about.
Exactly.
They're just kind of like, look, we're going to talk about it. So I appreciate it.
I am going to have to go try them out. I got a road trip coming up, so maybe I'll download one or two for a road trip and try them out.
Yeah, you should. I really like them.
All right. Shall I move on to Mormons behaving badly?
Oh, yes.
Well,
who do we have now?
I'm not going to go into detail about this because they're just, it's happening all the time. There was a 77-year-old Orem man who was previously a bishop in the 1970s who was recently arrested for child abuse allegations. These allegations are alleged to have occurred after he was a bishop, so not during his time as a bishop. But of course, the headline was Mormon bishop arrested for sex abuse. Yikes. Well, it's a little misleading. So, but one thing I do want to touch on just really quickly in Mormons behaving badly, we have talked a number of times about vandalisms and arsons and things like that are going on in church buildings. There were 3 buildings down in Utah that were vandalized, and the gentleman who did it was ordered to pay $1.3 million in restitution. He was sentenced to a term of 1 to 15 years. He was given credit for the 320 days he spent in jail. He pled guilty but mentally ill in his 2 counts of arson and a second-degree felony. So I guess he was lighting these buildings on fire. I thought his was vandalism. But then there was another interesting article in the Deseret News because I pontificated not last month, but the month before. I said, I swear we are hearing about more vandalisms and arsons of church buildings than we used to. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, the statistics bear that out.
Oh, so it is more.
It is more.
Right. Because I remember it's just like, are we just... Is it because we're doing this podcast and so they always fall on our month?
It is more. So. Hate crimes, especially against religion, according to the FBI, are on the increase. And I think we've definitely seen that in our buildings. And the church, of course, has said, it's unfortunate there's been a worldwide increase in violence, vandalism, and desecration of religious sites, buildings, including shootings, arson, graffiti, and damage to facilities and more. They want these buildings to be a place where the spirit can be felt and people can worship together, but that's not always possible due to the actions of others.
Yikes.
So, all right. Should we end with our favorite things?
Sure. Okay.
You go first.
Favorite things, just because we like to share good things.
Not because we're being paid or anything like that. We don't get any kickbacks. We're just telling you what we like.
Okay. My favorite thing this month, besides the At Last She Said It podcast, is a show on, I believe it's on Hulu. It's called Welcome to Wrexham. And I believe Al or Jeff, somebody recently mentioned this.
Okay.
In passing. I don't know who it was. This is a docuseries, and it is about Ryan Reynolds, famous actor, Ryan Reynolds.
Okay. I'm going to put this on my phone right now, even as we're talking.
This other actor called Rob Mullaney, which I didn't know, but my husband knew from
I've never heard
a
of
TV
him.
show. But Ryan Reynolds, everybody knows. They bought this football club in Wales. Now, football, as you know, over there is actually soccer.
Yeah.
It's called football. So they bought this club called Wrexham AFC.
Okay.
In the town of Wrexham. And they bought it and are chronicling, like doing a documentary of them owning it at the same time. So this was like kind of a fledgling club, they're not doing great. They're in the lowest league. They want to move up to a higher league. They want to fix up the stadium. And so these two American Hollywood actors bought it. And the townspeople are excited, and they're trying to turn this team around. They fired a bunch of players. They fired the coach. They brought in a new coach. They're fixing up the stadium.
This is like real life. Like
this is real life.
Brian Reynolds literally bought a soccer team.
They bought this team, and then when they bought it, the idea was, we will make a documentary about us buying this team
and turning it around.
Oh,
this is fascinating.
And it is so interesting.
I thought this was like him acting in something.
No, even if you're not like a soccer football fan, you don't have to be a sports fan. They talk a lot about the town that it's set in. It is hilarious because Ryan Reynolds and this Rob guy, they're really funny. They're very like self-deprecating. And this whole time they keep like being like, did we make a bad choice? Because they're just sinking like millions and millions of dollars into this team.
Exactly.
And so we're like midway through right now, and we're waiting to see like what's going to happen with this team. Are they gonna make it? Are they gonna like be able to move up in their league?
Interesting.
So it's really good and so well done. The storytelling on it is just so well done. I will warn you, there are F-bombs.
Okay.
As I just got done saying, I don't want people waving F-bombs on their flags.
I know, but I assume that you're not watching
this
series with your child.
But I don't watch this with my children.
Exactly.
That's just my disclaimer, because I know people like to know that information before they watch something, so they can make an educated choice.
Okay.
All right. What's your favorite thing?
My favorite thing, again, it is the visual I used just a minute ago. It is the high chews, but it is the sweet and the sour pack. And let me tell you what they have in the sweet and sour pack. They've got watermelon, lemon, and my very most favorite, grapefruit.
Ooh.
Let me tell you, I absolutely love the grapefruit. I didn't even realize they had this sweet and sour pack. And it was the last time we did a Fifth Sunday. They were passing around candy to keep the adults awake on Fifth Sunday. And one of the things they passed around were these high chews, and I had a watermelon high chew, and I'm like, what in God's name is that? It is so good. And
so high chews, good for baseball players and
Fifth Sundays.
Sunday
So yes, I highly recommend the sweet and sour pack.
All right, very nice.
Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up for us tonight, Twim Nation. Thank you very much for joining us. And as always, if you want to complain about us, just send an email to Jeff at contact@thisweekinmormons.com.
It's really, really a sweet setup we have.
Exactly. We don't have to deal with your negativity. We have a filter for that. We have a broker for our negativity. Or you can, if you really want to engage, apparently there's a hot topic on the Facebook page right now. So hop on the Facebook page, or you can find us on Twitter, or you can find us on Instagram. And if you want to be a Patreon supporter and help us keep the lights on, $3 a month, folks. So thank you very much and have a good night.
Thanks for listening.